I would like to begin, and we're going to stay on time. So I will try to tell you, because sometimes when you're speaking, you forget that it's 20 minutes. 3 minutes before your time is up, I'll let you know if you look my way, or maybe I should sit in front of you and just give you a little high sign so we stay on time and that everyone is respected and that everyone has their allotted time for questions and answers. There'll be 2 breaks today, and there'll be a lunch, so I hope to jingle mingle with all of you. Okay, with that said, I would like to first introduce our first speaker of the day. It's Dr. Ashraf Gamal El Din. I had the pleasure of meeting him just a few minutes ago. He's the CEO of Hawkamah. Now, I have to tell you, I speak Spanish, I speak English, I speak a dialect from my country, which is called Papiamento. I'm going to make a quiz. We are the smallest, you're going to tell me during the break where I'm from. We're the smallest landmass in the world with 2 countries. So I have a king and I have a president. You'll figure that out and you'll tell me. Don't yell it out. I can give some clues throughout the day. There's 1 or 2, if I give it to you right away, you'll know where I'm from. And I'll just tell you that I'm on 37 square miles. Now, you hear I have a New York accent, but I am born in New York. So I have another president, but we're not going to talk about that. So let's say I have 2 presidents and a king. You'll tell me where I'm from throughout the day. I'll give you something to think about and say, where could she be from? Don't Google yet. You're Googling. I saw somebody Google. Anyway, so Dr. Ashraf Gamal El Din, let me tell you just a little bit about him. He is the CEO of Hawkamah, the Institute for Corporate Governance at DIFC. He's a certified governance expert. He served as the executive chairman of Egypt Post and the deputy executive director of the Egyptian Banking Institute. Dr. Ashraf is also the founder of the Egyptian Corporate Responsibility Center and the executive director of the Egyptian Institute of Directors. He's a board member in various companies. He's advised the Minister of Investment from 2004 to 2010 as a professor at the Cairo University. He holds a PhD from Manchester in the UK, Manchester University in the UK, and he has a master's degree from Carleton University in Canada and Cairo University. So, my dear delegates, let us please welcome our first speaker.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. This is a very difficult task to be the first speaker here. Nikolai, it's nice to see you. Okay, so I don't want to talk about myself, but let me just tell you about Hawkamah, because this will explain a lot of things that I'll be saying now. So Hawkamah, it's a corporate governance institute. It was established 2006 as part of the DIFC, the Dubai International Financial Center, which is one of the biggest global free zones in the financial services. We have been operating since then on the MENA region on different initiatives on corporate governance and sustainability. We have 4 key types of activities. One of them is that we work with the regulators of the region. So capital market authorities, central banks, where we review codes of corporate governance, help them to update these codes so that they are matching with good practices, globally speaking, and so on. We are part of the different global working groups on governance with the OECD and the ICGN and different ones. And also we work with the government. So sometimes we work with ministries, authorities on their governance and so on. And then we do a lot of awareness events. So we have lots of conferences, webinars, seminars in which we try to create awareness of governance and different elements of it. And then we work with companies and banks, different types of companies and banks directly in the area of assessing their governance, helping them to improve their governance structures, work on the boards of directors, assessing the boards regarding their performance and sustainability and so on. And then finally, we have certification programs for board members and for company secretaries. Now, one of the things we have been doing for a long time is working with S&P on the ESG index for the MENA region. I will talk about this later, but from that perspective and also from working with companies and boards of directors, we have lots of insights about what's really happening in the boardrooms and what's happening in companies in these areas. So from that perspective, I'll give you some insights. I know that this might be basic for some of you, but again, it's not basic for a lot of companies and boards that we are dealing with. I know that many of you might already know some of that stuff. Now, you all know the idea of sustainability in general, which is you try to achieve your objectives without sacrificing the objectives of the future generations, so that you do whatever you want to do and you achieve it, but keeping in mind that you are not damaging the future of other generations, your sons and daughters, and whatever that's gonna come in the future. So this is really the key idea in general. However, when we go down to the corporates, usually there are different frameworks for that. So one of the very famous ones is using ESG as the framework for how to manage and how to report and how to go about sustainability, if you like. So we think of it as sustainability is a very nice concept. It's quite huge, but then you need to narrow down for you as a company, as a corporate, and then put a framework. There are lots of them available. The very famous one is the ESG one, which is I'm sure that you are all aware of, definitely. So again, and when you talk about the E, with the environment part, which is again, it's a very famous one, especially that now we had the COP27 in Egypt last year, COP28 this year, and here is going on in Dubai, is in fact when you try to pay attention to environmental issues. This can be gas emissions, carbon recycling, use of material, water, electricity, and all that stuff. So everything which has to do with the environment is companies usually put this under the E. And then the S, of course, is covering the human element. So that human element is covering your own employees plus your customers and anyone that you are dealing with, or what we call it, the stakeholders. Previously, it was to be perceived that the company is responsible for the employees, they take care of them, the welfare, but now whenever you are selling a good or a product or a service, you need to think of the impact on the social fabrics of the society for those who are using it and those who are affected by it. Now, the governance one, which is the overarching one. So the governance one is really about the way in which your company is directed and controlled. And we see a lot of companies don't get this idea correct, which is what do we mean by that and how to report. And because we read lots of reports as part of what we are doing, we see that there is lack of understanding of some of these basic concepts. So it's always a good idea, even if you understand that you take your people in your team, in your department, in your company, or even your board, if you have access to the board, to these basics, so that they understand where are we coming from and where do we stand, basically. Now, on the governance one, we talk about lots of things, but in the key aspect to talk about is the board of directors, who sits on the board, what kind of experience they have, knowledge, diversity of the board members, gender diversity, ethnic diversity, age diversity, and so on. And this is all has proven to be very effective and really affecting the quality of the governance and sustainability in the companies and their performance as well. So paying attention to this is quite an issue. In the region, we have different types of boards we have seen. I'm sure that many of you have interacted with that, which sometimes they lack the basics of good governance, if you like. Now, we focus on governance a lot of times because it has been proven that if you don't have good governance, you will not have good E or good S. That's not going to happen. So you cannot really have in the company good environmental policies and systems and social without having good governance in your board of directors in the company itself, because that's where it starts. It always starts at the top of the company. Now, of course, again, it's actually, when we talk about ESG, it's usually perceived as it's an investor sort of focus, where investors look at it to make decisions regarding investments. And this is one of the issues that some of you might face in their companies, which is when companies say, we don't need institutional investors in our, we have the money already. Why do we care about that? Why should we pay attention to the idea of investors and so on? Again, now when investors look at this, they look at it from the risk perspective, which is how much the company is managing the risk associated with environment and social. Again, just to give you an example of how this is sometimes absent, in one of we have done a major work for one of the banks in one of the countries where it's a group of islands. And it is known that these islands will disappear after 50 to 100 years because of the global warming. And when we discussed with the board, we saw the risk they are discussing, that's not even discussed. So the environment for them is not one of the risks, despite that they will be affected directly by what's happening, global warming and so on. So they don't think this as a risk that we might be facing. And again, we deal a lot with companies here in the region, and they don't see environmental risk as something, it's a risk. They see it as something nice to report on, but they don't really understand that this is, from the risk perspective, it is really quite important. So companies which have good ESG scores and good ESG performance and reporting, then eventually these are the companies which are perceived to be sustainable, to be looking at the long term, to be good for investors, because of the long-term sustainability or success expected from these companies. So companies with cut the corners and doesn't pay attention to these elements, they are taking high risk, and investors are worried about investing in this kind of companies because of this sort of factor. Okay. And now you have the new terminology, which I'm sure that many of you are aware of, which is the impact investors. And these are investors who are trying to achieve profits, because you have to remember that investors are about profits end of the day. So all these elements should not belittle the understanding of investors' motivation, which is achieving profits. But you have now the impact investors, and these are the ones who are trying to achieve the profits, but while in creating an impact in certain areas. I'll just give you an example of a list of impact that came out for last year, that came of December of last year, about this year. So for example, these investors might be willing to invest in technology which will improve the lives of certain people, or on improving the environmental impact of certain types of industries, technology that will help people to work remotely and be balanced more between their personal lives and their work lives. So these are different areas which came out as this is the list for impact investors for them as priorities for 2023. So these are investors who are looking for a specific kind of activities that they would like to invest money in. So yes, they make profits, but then they say, let's create an impact while we are achieving our profits and our targets in that respect. Now, of course, I cannot tell you enough about the rise of ESG that happened. Again, I will tell you when we reach to the index part, our experience in this one, but now it is well known that ESG is not something nice to have. It's not really a good thing. It's a must. So, we are not really talking about something which is, it's good to, to be nice and to show that you are nice. It's not about this, Khalas. Now, as you can see the quote from the CEO of State Street, for example, that he said that we believe a company's ESG score will soon effectively be as important as its credit rating. So when they look at, at financial statements, they have to look also at your sustainability and your ESG, your reporting, to see what you are doing in reality. So it's really becoming much more important now. Now, one of the things which we realize here in the region, because of the nature of the companies here, is some of them, they still think of the S in the social way, of the old-fashioned way, which is, again, you open a sustainability report from the companies, you see they are doing things for the community, they are having, they go to the beaches, collect garbage and for recycling and stuff like that, which is all nice. But one of the key things which investors look at is, what is it that you are doing in your core business? So thinking about the S, it has to do with your own operations. You cannot talk about, you help in recycling by going to the beach and collecting, garbage for recycling. That's not about it. What they will look at is, how is it that in your own business, your own operations, managing achieving your targets, and even in your daily management, how are you including the idea of social in your decision making, which is creating the culture of being sustainable. And the culture part is a very difficult part, which is whenever you are faced with a decision, you have some sort of criteria, and this criteria reflects your priorities. So you have two choices of technology. One of them might have less profit, but then it's much better for the environment. Then how you make a decision? Should I go for the high return one, or should I go for the one which protects our environment, for example? The same thing for social. You might think of social policies, this is a cost element on me. If I take care of the employees, give them leaves like maternity leaves for men and women and all these things, you might say, that's really too much. It's going to disrupt my work. It's not. This is the key thing. So when you face that decision, no, I value employees, I value the social life of my people, I have to allow this to happen. And so it really becomes a way to make decisions. Now, why am I saying this? Because again, you see a lot of reports which cover on things which are irrelevant. So it's always from within, from your own company, your own policies, your employees, your manufacturing and your operations. So how to integrate this is a difficult part. And the difficulty in this, it's a very activity specific, which is, depending on what kind of activities you are engaged in, you will see what's relevant to you and how you can really be more responsible in this case. Okay, so it's not really something which is nice to have, and that's why we had in the last few years, we had massive increase in what we call responsible investing globally. I mean, it's just the numbers. If you look online, it's really massive. It's like, I think in 3 years, quadrupled the amount, 5 times the amount of responsible funds just in the European area. So people are realizing more and more that we have to spend more money and to have to invest more in sustainable sort of funds and sustainable companies and so on. Now, this is very important on the disclosure side because, again, we have seen some sort of a strange practice where some companies, in fact, when we work with the boards and the companies, we realize that they are actually better than they disclose. So in many companies, they are doing good, but that's not reflected on the reports, especially on the social part. Maybe because of the cultural thing for us to say, I do something good, but I don't have to say it. Like, you have to say it as well. So I do recall like a couple of companies where we went to in Saudi Arabia, for example, when we read their sustainability report. It was quite poor. When we went there, they have very advanced environmental protection policies in their own factories and in their own industry. They have very advanced programs for protection for employees, for educating employees, for coaching them for the future career path for them, but that's not mentioned. They don't actually mention that. So the whole idea is it's not enough to be good, you have to be transparent about it, not to boast about it, but so others can learn from you. So they see that, we can do something like this. We can have a program like this for our own employees or female workers, for example, or to create gender diversity among our staff and so on. So that's the whole idea of publishing it. Now, what is the problem if now you have lots of these boutique advisors and firms which are doing research and publishing information about companies? So if you are not publishing yourself, what will happen is the investor will start to look for source of information somewhere else. And they will get information about you written by somebody else who might not be accurate or might even not have all the intentions, the good intentions, if you like. So it's much better that you disclose, even if you think you have something which you are not very proud of, to mention that and to mention what's your plans to overcome this is much better than not talking about it. Because this will allow other people to start to give information reports about you, which is not really the best thing that you can do. So the whole idea is you have to do it in the right format, and there are different frameworks for this, which is again one of the challenges that you are facing or we are facing. So while you have some big companies which can go for the GRI, you have other smaller companies which find this too extensive and it's too much for them. And I think there is no lack of frameworks which are available globally. You have things which are very simple, like the Global Compact, and you have things which are more advanced and sophisticated and so on. So again, the whole idea is not even to follow a specific framework. The whole idea is to give a reflection about what you are doing and what is it really that you are trying to do in the future. Okay. So, I think one of the key things which we always mentioned is, now traditionally when we looked at the annual reports, they were very small. Now they are getting bigger, but it's about the quality. It's not just the size of these reports. So now we are telling companies that this is a model where you can use, actually we put this thing together, which is because again, when we talk to boards sometimes, we realize that in many cases, sustainability is driven by management, not by boards of directors. So managers are doing something while the boards have no idea about what's happening and why that's important. Now, if the company is starting this journey, or you'd like to educate even your boards about this, or your top management about it, so the key thing is you have to start by the materiality assessment of what is relevant to me, end of the day. because you have lots of variables when you talk about sustainability and ESG. You have lots of them. Now, not all of them are relevant to you. So, for example, some of the companies might be very small in terms of labor, but very big in terms of impact on, technology and other people, for example. So that's something that you have to pay attention to. Maybe some companies are massive in size in manufacturing, where you're using lots of resources. So the idea of use of resources and water and electricity and so on is something which is quite essential for you, or pollution. So again, you need to think of what are the elements which are material to us. In this case, in that specific company, based on your own operations. Now, once you identify that, you start to go into step number 2, which is trying to measure the performance. Now, this is one of the challenges we have faced in some of the companies where we help them, for example, to put together a sustainability strategy. They say, we would like to have targets. And to do that, you have to measure where you are right now. And they had no way to measure this. So you say, okay, now let's see how much you are using in terms of power, different sources of power, and water and stuff, and they have no measurement for this. So second thing is, okay, now these factors are important for us. Let's measure them. Let's start to measure them and see where we are right now in terms of each of these important factors. And then the third one, which is integrating sustainability into your own strategy and risk. Now, you will see some strange thing in the region here, which is some companies do have 2 strategies. You have a strategy, and then you have a sustainability strategy. It doesn't go like this. As we said, remember that it's integrated part of your business, which is in all your decision making, in all your strategy and objectives, it has to be integrated. You cannot say we have 2 things. One is the business strategy, the other one is the sustainability strategy. It doesn't go like this. Once you see that, you know something is wrong in this case. It has to be one. So integrating them together is a key element. And then after that, you start to ensure that you have the top level commitment. Again, in many companies we have seen, it is really the management which is driving this. Now, investors will look at signs that the board is engaged and the board is committed, because they know that sometimes this might be short-termism. I mean, we have seen companies, for example, where they did have a sustainability report 1 or 2 years and then they stopped. They don't have it anymore. And we see this because every year we have to see what they are doing and to follow on that. So to make sure that the company is sustainable, investors will look at the board of directors, how they are engaged. And there are signs they see this. So for example, does the board have sustainability committee on the board level or not? You might have it on the management, but does the board have it or not? Okay, now you have maybe a high-level management committee on sustainability. Is any of the board members there? Is he or she engaging there with that sort of work or not? Okay, now, for example, reporting. Is the management reporting to the board about all these issues? Is that discussed on the board meetings or not? So they start to think of all these things. So we have to show signs that at top management and the board, they are committed to sustainability. Remember that, for example, when you talk about the Global Compact, to be a signatory there, it has to be decision by the board of directors, not by the CEO. Okay? And that's to make sure that the board is leading, not just a person. If we change him or her, then things will go bad. No, it's actually the board itself, so it's part of the company and what they are doing there. And then finally, engaging with stakeholders, something which is a lot of us don't really do that much. Engaging with them, which is trying to understand what are their expectations. So you have clients, you have to have a way, and this is not like just an email or a complaint box. It's really about a dialogue of, okay, now, what do you expect from us? What is it that you want to see that will tell you that we are more sustainable and we are closer to your needs? So that's not employees only, it's employees, it's clients, it's partners, it's suppliers, it's everyone that you are dealing with basically. And you have to engage them in this dialogue so that you know from them what are their expectations, okay? Now, some people, which we see this a lot here in the region, they say, actually, our shareholders don't ask about this. Now, you do have 2 types of shareholders or investors. You have the short-term ones, and this is not really the one that will care for any of what we're talking about. Because what happens is they buy and sell shares on a daily basis. So they don't really look at any, of that stuff, because for them, it's short-term anyways. They keep the share for a few days and then sell it. So that's not really the kind. But if you look at the long-term investors, they ask for different things. So yes, they look at the financials, definitely, that's very important. But then they start at, okay, now if I go in your company and have 1% of the shares, what are my rights in this case? And how do you protect my rights as 1% shareholder in your company? Especially if you have major big shareholders. In this region, mostly it's the government or some of the families, for example. So if your family owns 70, 80%, I come to own 1%. Do I have any rights? Is there a guarantee for me that actually it's going to be some sort of fair treatment there? And what is the board composition? How independent the board is? This is one thing which most investors look very much at independence of the board of directors, how independent it is. Independence gives them assurance that they protect me. If they are all affiliated with one of the shareholders or two of them, they know that this is not really a good board for us to be investing in this company, for example. So that's quite important. Remuneration to top management, it's not about how much they are getting, but how much is connected to long-term success and sustainability. So it's about the KPIs. Now, I'm sure that you maybe have read the case of Wells Fargo, for example, and other cases. The problem there is simple. The board talks about very good ethical issues. The KPIs for the CEO is only about the numbers, how much you achieve. Now, if my KPI as a CEO is money, and you tell me about the environment, I don't care for the environment, because end of the year, my payment is based on the money only. So they look at this. What are the KPIs to assess the CEO? And is this disclosed or not? I mean, some of you are disclosing, you have even GRI reports. Are you disclosing the factors, the KPI for the management? How you assess them and the percentage of that, how much is based on money and how much is based on sustainability. And then, of course, the control environment, how to make sure that it will not be a one-man show by which one man makes the decision. He will take the company bust and he or she will get away with it. Okay, so this is the final part which I talk about, which is the index. This is a very important index. Actually, we have done this more than 10 years ago, actually 12 years ago with S&P Standard & Poor's. And yesterday we had a session to follow up on what's happening with this index. Now, this index covers all listed companies in the Middle East and North Africa region, starting from Morocco until Oman, okay? What we do is we look at the top 150 companies in terms of liquidity in the market, and these companies are then subject to scrutiny over 200 variables of ESG. And we try to assess every company based on what they are doing and disclosing in the area of environment, social, and governance practices. And then the final score, we give it to S&P. They have some sort of module that will give more weights for companies which are manufacturing certain things. And anyways, a model, and then they come up with the index end of the day. Now it's on their website, so you can follow that index, what's happening there. And what we have done is we have done some research on it. Every year we look at it, and it's always outperforming the market, which means companies which are high on that index, they are doing much better than the rest of the market, and that's always the case. And you can see live tracking of this index on S&P website, okay? So that's one thing. The other thing is, when we did even the ROI, so companies which are investing in a portfolio of shares from the normal S&P index, the Pan-Arab index, and then this one, which is ESG, how much you achieve, it's on average 50% more you achieve profits if you invest in companies which are in that index, which are higher on ESG in that respect. So this is really, again, an evidence of this. We created one like this in Egypt as well. So in Egypt, I think it was 2009. Here it was 2010, but that's for the Middle East and North Africa. And then 3 years ago, we launched one for the UAE as well. So we have 3 indices of that kind in the MENA region, S&P specifically. I don't know why. Can you just put the next slide, please? Next slide. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so we see that disclosure has improved a lot, but we see lots of PR stories there. Okay, so you see a report and then talk about environment. And all the nice statement about environment, what is it that you are doing? What are your own activities? What are your objectives? How do you measure your impact and how are you changing that? This is what we are looking for. Not a nice story about how important environment or employees are. That's fine. So some people say employees are important and women, that's fine. What are the programs you are having in place to empower women in your company? What are the gender diversity programs that you are having? What are your targets in the middle management and top management? Don't tell me about our 50% or 60% are women. Tell me how many of them are on the top C-suite, for example, in your company. How many of them are on the board of directors? So these stories are not usually there. You still have nice statements, but not specific stories. In the environment, you do have targets, which is some companies put it there, but this is the key thing. It's not about a story only. So we'd like to know how much money you are making, but then how are you making it? How are you making this money and where are you spending it? So we need to see these sort of specific measurements on your reports that will tell the investor that we do have targets and we're managing it and we are improving it year on year and we are reporting on it, even if we fail. We say, well, we failed to achieve that, but then we will actually try to achieve it within 3 years, whatever it is. So it's like a story that we are trying to find. It's not really always there. Of course, with the pandemic, we started to have more on the S side, which is employees and so on. What are we doing there to protect the health of employees and so on, and the programs and that stuff, that's really gaining momentum now, which is quite important, but still, governance is the most powerful part which is there. Still, we are not even there yet. Even in the governance part, if you understand governance, you see that maybe 30% of the information is still missing, even on the best part, which is the governance disclosure of your company. So again, in some cases, we still struggle to know who are the board members of this company, for example. Imagine that. A listed company cannot even find the board members' names, or what are they doing, what are the experiences they have, or whether this is independent, executive, non-executive, that's not even there. And that's listed companies in the region. So I'm trying to focus on that because they are the benchmark, but still we are a little bit far away. So what I'm trying to say, again, if you look at the S&P index, it's there. If you look at our website in hawkamah.org, you can see the variables which are used in measuring these companies. So it will tell you a framework on how to improve if you like to get better scores in index or even in general. We are still far away, but we are on the right track. The key thing is you have to do something good before you report on it. It's not about a report. It's about what you are doing. And then you mention that in the report. And the more specific you are, the better it is. Just be specific. Don't give me the nice words. We know it. Just tell me what are the policies, what are the systems, what are the targets. How are you capturing these things? How are you changing it? What kind of efforts are you putting? How are you assessing your management? How are you paying them money? What kind of culture are you actually encouraging this company by your compensation system? All this is quite important. So this has to be the core of your report. When we read, we look for all these things. You have sometimes a 100-page report and doesn't really have any of that. Very nice pictures and you know these windmills and the greenery and the flowers. That's fine. What are you doing in this? Okay. Sorry, I took a little bit long. Thank you so much. I'll be here for maybe more than 1 hour, just in case if somebody would like to ask me any questions. Thank you so much. Thank you.